Chapter 41. You must have made a mistake. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Cheyenne hung her head low gloomily. Of course, she knew that Lucas wouldn't be able to afford the exorbitant jewelry, and she was just occasionally envious of such relationships. Noticing that her mother was a little out of sorts, Amelia pressed her soft and tender face against Cheyenne's face and said softly, "Mommy, don't be sad. One day, Daddy will buy you those beautiful stones." Looking at the nervousness in the large eyes of her daughter, who seemed to be afraid that she might be angry because she hadn't received any jewelry from Lucas, Cheyenne couldn't help but pinch her cheeks gently and smile. "Yes, I'll be waiting." At this moment, a woman dressed like a waitress walked up to Cheyenne, bent down, and whispered into her ear, "Miss Carter, sorry to disturb you, but someone is looking for you." Cheyenne frowned. "Who's looking for me?" The waitress's voice became even softer. "He said that his last name is Gray." "Gray? Lucas Gray?" Cheyenne thought for a while and realized that Lucas seemed to be the only person she knew with the last name, Gray. "Oh right, our family was invited to the Intercontinental Hotel today, and it was quite an impromptu event. Lucas happened to be away from home at that time, and Mom didn't want him to tag along to the engagement party because she thinks he's incompetent, so no one informed him. Now that Lucas is here, did something happen?" Thinking of this, Cheyenne handed Amelia over to Charlotte and left with the waitress, using the excuse of going to the washroom because she was afraid that her mother might start making a din again after hearing Lucas's name. However, the waitress didn't take Cheyenne outside the hotel and instead led her to an elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. Seeing the puzzlement and wariness in Cheyenne's eyes, the waitress smiled and explained, "Mr. Gray is waiting for you on the top floor of the hotel. Rest assured. There are surveillance cameras in the elevator. I won't lie to you." Cheyenne couldn't resist on the spot, but she was still keeping her guard up. Soon, they arrived at the top floor of the Intercontinental Hotel. At this moment, Flynn Davis was giving his last speech in the banquet hall. "I initially wanted everyone to give their blessings to that loving married couple, but the mysterious man is very insistent on keeping a low profile and just wants to spend this unforgettable wedding anniversary with his wife quietly today. Therefore, for the rest of the night, please feel free to help yourselves to the wine and food we've prepared and enjoy the entertainment programs. Please enjoy the night." The attendants moved about smoothly, serving drinks on a tray, along with pastries, and there was a buffet. All of a sudden, the atmosphere in the hall was much more relaxed and lively. Of course, since all the people present were prominent figures of various industries in Orange County, they naturally didn't just sit at their tables and eat. They each held a wine glass and went around to socialize with their acquaintances and the people whom they wanted to get to know. In contrast, the Carters were in an awkward situation because no one came forward to talk to them. Even when Dominic Carter took the initiative to talk to others, they would simply patronize him perfunctorily before leaving and shunning the Carters like the plague, as if they were afraid that the Carters would start pestering them. Bryce was infuriated when he happened to see Karen and Charlotte chatting merrily with some people near him. Unable to contain his anger any longer, he stormed over. When he went over, he heard a lady complimenting Karen, "Your daughters are so beautiful. You are so blessed." Although that lady didn't know why Karen's family was arranged to sit at the front table, she thought that there would be no harm in saying some nice things, for she might be able to build some connections with her. With this thought in mind, the lady kept caressing the back of Charlotte's hand, as if she was incredibly fond of her. Bryce humphed coldly and walked forward. Some people just like bragging, lying, and flaunting. She even said that her daughter is getting engaged to Ethan Sawyer's son today, but what happened? Where's the engagement? Where are the Sawyers? Charlotte's pretty face turned red. Previously, they all thought that the event tonight was an engagement party, but it turned out not to be. She felt really embarrassed now that Bryce exposed the misunderstanding. Unwilling to seem weak, Karen retorted sneeringly, "Well, at least we get to sit at the main table at the front, while some people can only sit at the door and watch. Bryce jumped up as if his tail had been stepped on. Would you be able to sit here today if not for the Carters? You're a bunch of ingrates. Exasperated, Karen put her hands on her waist and was about to lash out at him, but an attendant walked over and interrupted. Miss Carter, Mrs. Carter, Mr. Sawyer has specially reserved a private room for you to rest in. Would you like to make your way there? Mr. Sawyer. It must be Ethan Sawyer. Karen was naturally overjoyed because she was planning to ask the Sawyers when they were going to do the engagement officially. Yes, of course. Our in-laws are so considerate to have specially prepared a private room for us. We certainly can't let their goodwill go to waste. Karen harumphed at Bryce with disdain. She then took Charlotte and Amelia to the private room on the second floor while everyone watched with envy. Bryce's face was pale yet reddened, but he no longer dared to say anything else. He had been repeatedly embarrassed during the party, and he really couldn't stay any longer. When Karen and the others arrived at the door of the private room on the second floor, she happened to see Ethan Sawyer passing by with some people. She hurriedly ran up to greet him. Hello, Mr. Sawyer. After taking a glance at her, Sawyer naturally recognized her to be Lucas's mother-in-law, so he returned the greeting politely. Hello, you must be Miss Carter's mother. Karen nodded profusely. Yes, we are going to be a family soon, but this is the first time we're meeting each other. This is really. While grinning widely, she pulled Charlotte over. This is my youngest daughter, Charlotte. Charlotte, quick, greet your father-in-law. Charlotte was extremely shy and embarrassed. Who would give such an introduction? We haven't gotten engaged yet, and this is our first meeting, but she's already calling him my father-in-law. How can I bring myself to do that? After hearing Karen's words, Sawyer was dumbfounded. Family. In-laws, father-in-law. What? Thus, Sawyer asked carefully, Mrs. Carter, did you make a mistake? Chapter 42. Mistake in truth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios ednl.co. Although Sawyer's question was hesitant and cautious, Karen didn't realize it at all. She chuckled and pulled Charlotte toward him. I didn't get it wrong. Well, you sent so many expensive engagement gifts to our home for Charlotte previously, and we couldn't agree more to this marriage. This might seem embarrassing, but I thought that the banquet tonight was for Charlotte's engagement. After thinking about it, Sawyer immediately understood. It turned out that the Carters had gotten the wrong idea. When Lucas had just returned to Orange County, Sawyer tried to look out for him. On the one hand, because Chad Kennedy, the butler of the Huttons, had requested him. On the other hand, he wanted to get into Lucas's good books too. So he had specially prepared expensive betrothal gifts for Cheyenne on behalf of Lucas. But the Carters mistook that Sawyer wanted his son to marry Charlotte. Sawyer was caught between laughter and tears. Mrs. Carter, you've really made a mistake. I only have a son and a daughter, who are both married. Karen was immediately dumbstruck. The wealthy son-in-law she had been looking forward to turned out to already belong to someone else. Charlotte turned pale too. Since Ethan Sawyer's son is already married, he can't marry me. In that case. What's the matter with those betrothal gifts? Karen pondered over it, and when she thought of something, her face turned a little sullen. Mr. Sawyer, since your son is already married, these betrothal gifts. Your family might be very wealthy, but Charlotte is a young bachelorette. She can't become your second wife without a proper status. Hearing Karen's words, Charlotte turned pale in shock. She had indeed heard such rumors before. Many wealthy men had several wives at the same time, even though only one of them was rightfully married to them. However, she didn't want to be in such a relationship. Sawyer was speechless, as he didn't expect Karen to think this. At first, he was thinking of helping Lucas by giving those expensive gifts to make Lucas's status seem more distinguished. To his surprise, Lucas refused to reveal his identity, so it was hard to give an explanation for the gifts. After thinking about it, Sawyer said, "Mrs. Carter, those gifts are actually for your eldest daughter, Cheyenne Carter's." Before he could say the word husband, Karen screamed in horror. "What? For Cheyenne? You want Cheyenne to be your second wife? This. Cheyenne is already married and has a child. If your family doesn't mind, we. Don't worry. Cheyenne's husband is a loser. I'll get them to divorce immediately." "Mom! What nonsense are you spouting?" Charlotte didn't expect her mother to agree to such an absurd matter of letting Cheyenne become his second wife. She was instantly furious and anxious. Meanwhile, Sawyer broke out in a cold sweat after being shocked by Karen's words. Oh my God! Who would dare to let Lucas Gray's wife become their second wife? Are you sick of living? Mrs. Carter is really strange. How could she let her daughter get a divorce and become someone else's second wife while still rejoicing? I don't get it. Sawyer hurriedly stopped Karen and exclaimed, "Mrs. Carter. Hear me out. I meant that those gifts are for your daughter's husband, Mr. Lucas Gray. Previously, Mr. Gray did me a big favor, so I wanted to give some gifts to him. There might have been some slip-ups in between that resulted in this misunderstanding. Don't worry. My children are all married. They won't harbor designs on your daughter." Sawyer hurriedly put an end to it. Karen's face was full of disbelief. Those expensive gifts, the car, and the villa that are worth millions, as well as the shares and cash, are all for that good-for-nothing Lucas. How can that loser be capable enough to get such expensive gifts from the Sawyers? However, since Ethan Sawyer said it himself, Karen had to believe it. On the other hand, Charlotte was surprised and came to a sudden realization. Indeed, as she had expected, Lucas was not an ordinary person. However, at the same time, she felt awkward and embarrassed too. It turned out that those gifts were not for her but Lucas. Yet she was flaunting those things to him previously, and she had even mocked him for being too poor to afford them. Oh goodness! What was Lucas thinking when I did that? Charlotte was ashamed and embarrassed, and so was Karen because she had made a big fuss out of a huge misunderstanding. The two of them did not have the cheek to continue walking into the private room. At this moment, Cheyenne was standing on the top floor of the Intercontinental Hotel, almost too scared to go forth. The area of the ground in front of her was covered with vibrant and delicate fresh flowers, as well as green plants and flower pots of staggered heights that created a winding path. There were also romantic lights and balloons. All of this made the entire top floor seem like the most beautiful fantastical world. At the end of the path, there was a tall figure who seemed familiar yet like a stranger to Cheyenne. His features, appearance, and figure were all familiar to her, as they were the same as the person who appeared beside her every day. However, he felt like a stranger because he was wearing a suave white military uniform with a metal shoulder badge in the shape of an eagle feather. He looked handsome, sharp, and suave, completely unlike the person Cheyenne was familiar with. Seeing that Cheyenne had frozen in place, the man smiled and said in a warm voice, "Cheyenne. It's really Lucas. My husband, Lucas." Cheyenne watched as Lucas, who was wearing that valiant white military uniform, stepped onto the winding path paved with flower petals. She felt that she seemed to have slipped into a dream. All of a sudden, she couldn't tell if it was a dream or reality. Lucas walked toward Cheyenne while gazing at her. "Back then, I had nothing to my name, and I couldn't give you a decent wedding nor any gifts. I even caused you to suffer so much, and you've been unhappy. Now, I'd like to make it up to you." Lucas knelt down on one knee, holding a dazzling diamond ring in his palm. It was the pink diamond ring worth tens of millions of dollars and had caught the attention of everyone just now. Cheyenne covered her chest with both hands, shocked beyond words. This diamond ring and the mysterious young man Flynn Davis mentioned. Previously, her younger sister even jokingly said that it might be Lucas, but it looked like it was really Lucas. Cheyenne, I may be many years late, but I still want to ask you sincerely. Will you marry me? Chapter 43. Give me a chance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Lucas knelt down on one knee among the flowers and raised his head to ask, will you marry me? Cheyenne covered her mouth as her tears rolled down continuously. Surrounded by romantic flowers and lights and being proposed to by a handsome man with an exorbitant diamond ring was the scene that all women dreamed of. Complicated emotions surged in Cheyenne's heart, but she couldn't say yes. I'm sorry. Her words made a trace of disappointment flash in Lucas's eyes, and he immediately smiled bitterly. Well, I failed to fulfill my duty as a husband and father for so many years and made Cheyenne bear such a huge burden all by herself. What made me think that I'd be able to make her accept me in such a short period of time? The exorbitant jewelry and diamond ring were Lucas's way of expressing his feelings, but he would never think that Cheyenne would agree to his proposal only because of the gifts. The woman he had adored for so many years was definitely not that materialistic. Thus, Lucas was already mentally prepared to be rejected by Cheyenne. However, he still couldn't help but feel uncomfortable after really being rejected by the woman he fancied, even though he had prepared himself for it. When Cheyenne saw Lucas's eyes becoming dimmer, she felt a little dismayed. I'm really sorry, but I can only think of you as Amelia's father right now. I don't see you as my husband yet. I hope you will understand. Lucas nodded. He naturally understood that Cheyenne was willing to let him stay with the Carters for the time being only for their daughter's sake. When he and Cheyenne got married back then, they didn't have feelings for each other, and afterward, he left for so many years. Now that he had just returned, Cheyenne definitely wouldn't fall for him so quickly. Do you hate me then? He asked softly. Cheyenne was stunned. She thought about it carefully and realized that Lucas hadn't done anything heinous to her before. The incident that they were embroiled in was all because they had been set up. 6 years ago, Cheyenne's parents told her that Lucas had stolen the family's money and left her behind while he absconded. At that time, she hated Lucas for being an irresponsible liar. However, on the day Lucas first returned, Cheyenne knew that her parents must have lied. Lucas didn't steal their money or abandon her on purpose. Lucas had once mentioned that he left in order to become worthy of her. The fact that he had come to propose to her with a diamond ring worth tens of millions of dollars was the best proof. Besides, after Lucas returned, he had been accompanying her to deal with the Carters, protecting her, and playing with Amelia. In particular, on that cold and harsh rainy day, it was Lucas who brought her away from that terrifying place and even took care of her when she was ill. So, to be fair, Cheyenne did not hate Lucas and even had a good impression of him. However, this alone was not enough for Cheyenne to accept Lucas as her husband. Cheyenne bit her lower lip tightly and shook her head slightly. Lucas looked at her gleefully. Since you don't hate me, that's enough. I hope you can give me a chance. I truly want to treat you well. And if you can see my sincerity in the future and feel that you can trust me and depend on me, please don't turn me down again. Yes. Cheyenne nodded, feeling slightly relieved. When she came down using the elevator and returned to the banquet hall on the first floor, Cheyenne felt like she was in a trance and found it unreal. Lucas's sudden proposal and the fact that he was the mysterious man who caused an uproar in Orange County. Cheyenne. Where did you go? We were worried sick about you. Karen hurriedly pulled Cheyenne's arm and dragged her out of the surrealism. What's the matter, Mom? You still have the cheek to ask me. You went to the bathroom for such a long time, and we couldn't find you. Oh right. It's your wedding anniversary with Lucas today too. Did that good for nothing not give you any gifts? Karen asked, keeping her voice low. Cheyenne immediately remembered all that happened on the top floor just now. I'm telling you, that kid Lucas is pretending to be poor in front of us. You have to make him give you more gifts. Don't let him take advantage. Cheyenne was suddenly stunned. Did Mom find out so quickly that Lucas is that mysterious man who appeared at the auction? Before Cheyenne could ask, Karen continued, you don't even know, do you? The betrothal gifts that the Sawyers gave to our family were not for Charlotte but a token of gratitude for that good. Nothing. Funny, isn't it? Why does that garbage deserve such hefty gifts from the Sawyers? Cheyenne blinked and took a long time to react. You mean that large box of gifts was not for Charlotte but a thank you gift for Lucas? She had only been away for a short period of time, so how could so many things have happened? However, when Cheyenne saw the look of displeasure on Charlotte's face, she decided not to pry further. No girl would be comfortable about such a misunderstanding. The few of them looked for William Carter, Cheyenne's father, who was already drunk and hiding in a corner of the hall. Then they headed home. After arriving home, Cheyenne finally listened to Karen's account of how they met Ethan Sawyer and found out that the gifts were just a huge misunderstanding. However, Karen certainly didn't mention that she had almost agreed to let Cheyenne become his second wife. She simply emphasized how much of a pity it was that Ethan Sawyer's son was already married and that Charlotte had missed the opportunity for a good marriage. She then started criticizing Lucas in front of Cheyenne. Cheyenne, your loser husband helped the Sawyers and received so many gifts from them, but he stayed mum about it. How inhumane of him. Cheyenne was a little speechless. Mom, didn't you put away all the gifts at home? Actually, since those gifts were for Lucas, you should give them back to him. What? Karen screamed. You want me to return them to Lucas? Impossible. Lucas is our live-in son-in-law, so the things given to him should rightfully belong to us. Why should we return them to him? As she spoke, Karen poked Cheyenne's forehead, expecting better from her. How did I give birth to such a stupid girl like you? You're so eager to give away the wealth given to us. I didn't tell you this for the sake of letting you hand the treasures to that garbage Lucas. What exactly are you trying to say then? Cheyenne asked, feeling uncomfortable. Are you stupid? Think about it. Since the Sawyers have already said that Lucas helped them a lot, they must have given him more than merely a box of gifts. He must be holding more than that. What he has is yours. You have to hurry and think of a solution to get them from him. Otherwise, you'll be letting him gain huge benefits when you get divorced in the future. Chapter 44. Tempting Wealth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Karen sounded extremely righteous, but Cheyenne couldn't listen to her words any longer. Mom, regardless of how much money Lucas has, it all belongs to him. It has nothing to do with us. Also, I said that I won't get a divorce. Why do you keep bringing this up? After saying that, Cheyenne carried the sleepy Amelia and headed upstairs. Karen was so infuriated by Cheyenne's reaction that she was speechless for a long time. She then faced the stairs and yelled in displeasure, Who am I doing this for? It's all for you. That good. Nothing finally has some money now. If you don't hurry and get it from him before dumping him, what are you keeping him around for? Seriously, you don't listen to anything I say. William, who had drunk too much alcohol, was lying on the couch in a trance. Jolted awake by Karen's sharp shrieking, he barked in annoyance, Why are you yelling? You're too noisy. Karen immediately vented her anger on him. All you do is get drunk and throw a tantrum. You're so useless. I'm worried sick for this family, and all of you are out to make me angry. I'm so unlucky to have married a good. Nothing like you. Karen was wailing when the door suddenly opened with a loud creak, and Lucas entered. Since the last time he paid Karen rent, she turned a blind eye and did not stop him from entering the house. Anyway, he wouldn't do anything to Cheyenne. At most, he would play with Amelia. Apart from criticizing him and scolding him every now and then, Karen would treat him like he was transparent most of the time. However, things were different now. Since Lucas was so generous as to give her $15,000 previously, it meant that he definitely had a lot more cash on hand. But he never mentioned it before. Karen obviously wouldn't be able to tolerate it. She just disliked Lucas. Karen looked up and was just about to scold him, but he simply nodded at the both of them and vanished immediately. Lucas was gone before Karen could mock him, making her even more infuriated. Do you have any manners? Why aren't you greeting your elders? Humph, indeed, you're lowly and ill-mannered. You even hid your personal stash from us. Ha, you're just a live-in son-in-law who sponges off us. How dare you hide your money from us? You've gone overboard. Karen was scolding incessantly in the living room and deliberately slamming the broom against the rubbish bin. Lucas was sitting by the bed in Cheyenne's room, carefully holding the soundly sleeping Amelia and washing her feet for her. He completely ignored the scolding coming from downstairs. In the beginning, he would still get angered by Karen's harsh words. But now, he had long realized that it was not worth getting angry over her words. But Karen was Cheyenne's mother after all. So Lucas would treat her with basic respect, but that was as far as it went. However, Cheyenne was utterly embarrassed. Even she found her mother's words to be terribly callous. I'm sorry, my mom. She's going through menopause, so she's very ill-tempered and irritable recently. Don't take it too hard. Cheyenne racked her brain to come up with a reason for her mother's actions. Lucas smiled and didn't say anything. Instead, he grabbed a soft towel and used it to wipe his daughter's feet dry before carrying her to the bed and tucking her beneath the blanket. After watching Lucas do all of this, Cheyenne felt more and more embarrassed. A few days ago, she had been running a high fever after being in the rain. Amelia was worried about her but didn't want to leave Lucas either, so Lucas brought Amelia to the room and slept on a mattress on the floor. Today, Amelia had already fallen asleep, and the two of them were sharing the same room. So things got awkward, especially since she rejected Lucas's proposal today. Seemingly seeing how uneasy Cheyenne was, Lucas suddenly said, I have something to attend to tonight, so I'll get going. Before she said anything, he left. Although he also wanted to stay and try to spend more time with her, he knew that they both needed time and that he couldn't be too eager. There was no peace in the Carter residence tonight. During the banquet tonight, the Carters were humiliated in a way that they had never been before. First, the shameless shrew Karen boasted and humiliated them at the door. Afterward, they ran into the usher who deliberately neglected them and even specially arranged for them to sit at a small and shabby table by the entrance. As a result, they became the laughing stock of all the prominent figures of Orange County. After that, Flynn Davis of the Stardust Corporation made a speech, and countless families and businesses vied to cooperate with the Brilliance Corporation, which was just like a slap to their face. The Brilliance Corporation still belonged to them a few days ago. Of course, Cheyenne and Karen's family irked them the most. They were the garbage kicked out of the Carter family and had been disowned by them. Yet they managed to form connections with the Sawyers, the wealthiest family in Orange County, and even flaunted to them. They would never be able to tolerate this. Grandpa, are we going to let Cheyenne, her sister, and that shameless bitch Karen continue being haughty and trampling all over us? The more Bryce thought about it, the more infuriated he was as he punched the couch hard. His right wrist, which Lucas broke previously, was still wrapped in a thick layer of gauze. In short, he felt that Cheyenne's family was horrid, and he wanted all of them dead. Dominic's face was gloomy too. He had always been controlling, so after becoming the head of the family, he almost couldn't tolerate any defiance. After he kicked Cheyenne's family out, they not only did not live a miserable life, but they even got acquainted with the Sawyers. How could the prideful Dominic Carter accept this? Bryce, is it true that their family is going to be the Sawyers in .law? Dominic asked. Despite being indignant, Bryce nonetheless nodded. Grandpa, when I went to their home before, I saw Charlotte driving a limited edition luxury Lamborghini that costs at least $1 million. Besides, I even heard that the Sawyers gave them more than just a sports car. They also gave them a villa, a few stores, and $1 million in cash. All of the gifts were delivered to them in a box. Furthermore, at the banquet today, I tried to make things hard for them, but the Sawyers sent someone over to say that there was a private room reserved for them. It seems to be true. Dominic stayed silent, but he looked even angrier. At this moment, one of the Carters suddenly asked, "Those things belong to the Carters, so why should we give them to them?" Chapter 45. Your Own Money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. After saying that, Dominic and Bryce both looked over at this family member. This Carter hurriedly said, "Think about it. They were still part of the family when they received those gifts, so the gifts can't be considered as their family's private assets. Besides, you were kind to have provided for them for decades, so it's only right for them to show filial piety." Noel.n. After figuring out something, Bryce patted his thigh and exclaimed with excitement, "Yes. Those gifts should belong to us. I'll go get them back from them now." Dominic nodded in satisfaction. "If they really become in-laws with the Sawyers, I can let them return to the family as long as they hand over those gifts." Bryce recalled how smug Karen looked yesterday and hesitated for a moment. "Grandpa, what if they don't agree?" "Humph, if they don't agree, we'll make them return everything they obtained from the Carters over the years. Perhaps that box of gifts may not be enough to offset all of it. Tell them that clearly." Dominic smirked. "Yes, Grandpa. I know what to do." Bryce left excitedly. Bright early the next morning in Cheyenne's home. William and the others were still having breakfast when Bryce walked in with a group of people, pushed open the courtyard door, and sauntered in. "Oh, all of you happen to be at home, huh?" Bryce smiled roguishly. Cheyenne patted the frightened Amelia and stared at these people who barged in with disgust in her eyes. When Karen and Charlotte saw Bryce, they were both furious as well. "What are you doing here?" Bryce walked to the middle of the courtyard brazenly. "What am I doing here? If I remember correctly, the house that you are staying in now still belongs to the Carters. What right do you have to question me? So, are you here to chase us away?" Charlotte asked. Both Karen's and William's faces were sullen. Previously, Dominic had already openly driven them out of the Carter family and even disowned them. Now that Bryce was here, they reckoned that he must be here to confiscate their house. Bryce stared at William and Karen. "Well, Uncle, you grew up with the Carters, and I've been addressing you as my uncle for so many years. No matter what, I still care for you. How can I really chase you out?" William and Karen were shocked by his words. Although kinship was ridiculous to them, Bryce seemed to be saying that he wasn't here to chase them out. "What do you mean?" Cheyenne asked warily. She didn't believe that Bryce and Dominic would care about kinship. Besides, given Bryce's hostile attitude toward her in the past, he obviously couldn't wait to drive her out of the Carter family. How could he come here to say this to them after disowning them? "What I mean is, Grandpa has decided to rescind his orders on the account that you guys have lived with us for so many years. As long as you give us the gifts from the Sawyers, Grandpa will allow you back into the Carter family," Bryce said arrogantly. "Humph," Cheyenne sneered. "So it's just for the gifts? Don't even think about it. How can we give the gifts to you?" Karen was instantly anxious. Staring at her, Bryce said slowly, "Aunt Karen, isn't that what you told me last night? You said that the Sawyers have taken a liking to Charlotte and gave you a large chest of title deeds, a car, cash, and stores. You're going to become the Sawyers in-laws soon. Surely you don't care about that petty sum of money. As long as you hand these things over, Grandpa and I will let you return to the Carter family." "That? No. When she saw Bryce and Dominic at the banquet last night, she couldn't help herself and showed off to them. In the end, she found out that it was a huge misunderstanding. Now, she couldn't tell Bryce that she had made a mistake, but she wasn't willing to give the expensive gifts to the Carters. At this moment, Charlotte walked out. That was a mistake. The Sawyers gave those gifts to Lucas, not us. Bryce burst into laughter and jibed, "Charlotte Carter, do you take me for a fool? Lucas Gray. He's just a piece of trash. How could the Sawyers give him those gifts out of gratitude? You ought to come up with a less retarded excuse. Those things really don't belong to us. Don't think about taking them from us. Since we've been disowned, you can take this house back, and we'll move away." "That's all I have to say," Cheyenne said coldly. "Cheyenne, how can you say that?" Karen was displeased, as she couldn't understand why they had to give the house to them. Since they had lived here for decades, the house should have long belonged to them. "Humph, do you think you can just move away? It's not that easy." Bryce dropped the pretense and showed his true intentions. He exclaimed fiercely, "I'm not afraid of letting you know. If you really want to leave the Carters, return us all the money we've spent providing for you all these years. I'll do a simple calculation for you. William Carter, you have been living with us for more than 40 years. We'll take it that you spend $15,000 a year. That means you've spent $600,000 in total." Bryce pointed at William. Before William could speak, he pointed at the others. "And you, Karen, Cheyenne, and Charlotte, all of you have been sponging off us for 2 to 3 decades. The 3 of you have spent up to $1.4 million in total. You've also taken away at least $5 million worth of dividends and benefits from us, and you've lived in this house for decades. Considering all the miscellaneous expenses, it won't be much to ask you for $8 million, right?" Every word Bryce said made William's and Karen's faces turn even more distressed. When she heard Bryce's last sentence, Karen could no longer hold back and screamed, $8 million. Is this daylight robbery? How could we have spent $8 million? Besides, we only get a little more than $20,000 in dividends. Bryce laughed unrestrainedly. "Don't say I'm making this up. These things are recorded in the company's accounts every year. Anyway, you either pay us $8 million now and leave the Carter family, or take out that box of gifts and we'll let you back in the family. In the future, Grandpa might let Uncle William take over his position. You guys should consider carefully what you want to do." Chapter 46. The chance to return to the family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Cheyenne and Charlotte naturally did not believe Bryce's words. The Carters had never truly treated them as a part of the Carter family before, mainly because William Carter was not Dominic Carter's biological son. Thus, Dominic obviously wouldn't let William take over as the head of the family. William himself did not believe what Bryce said. He grew up knowing that he and Dominic were not blood-related, and Dominic had at best been kind to him and let him join the family on account of his mother. But after his mother passed away, he no longer enjoyed the same treatment that the direct descendants of the Carter family enjoyed. For example, the direct descendants and relatives would receive almost $100,000 each year in dividends, while William and his family would only receive about $15,000. Therefore, William didn't believe at all that he would be able to assume the position of the head of the family in the future. However, Karen was already tempted and was considering it in her head quickly. Although the box of gifts was very valuable, the gifts were meant for Lucas, and she reckoned that he would definitely take them away and gain the support of the Sawyers. So she definitely wouldn't get to keep the gifts. In her opinion, it would be better to give them to Bryce, as that would mean that they would at least be able to return to the Carter family. And in the future, she might even get to be the mistress of the family. Besides, she wouldn't give all of the gifts to the Carters. The value of all the items in the box was almost $15 million, and she felt that giving half to the Carters would be enough, as she wanted to keep the remaining half. If Lucas asked the Sawyers to help him get the gifts back, she would just say that the Carters took them away and tell them to look for the Carters. At the thought of this, the gaze in Karen's eyes when she looked at Bryce became less hostile, and she seemed rather enthusiastic instead. "Bryce, is what you just said true? Will you let us return to the Carter family as long as I hand that box of things over to you? Will William also have the chance to become the head of the family in the future?" "Of course. Grandpa said it himself." "Aunt Karen, have you decided?" Bryce smiled affirmatively. Seeing that Karen was wavering, Charlotte couldn't help but say anxiously, "Mom, do you still believe their nonsense and lies? Have you forgotten how they used to bully us?" Cheyenne even got on her knees to beg them, was drenched in the rain, and ended up running a high fever because of it. "Have they ever shown any concern? They're saying these things to us now obviously because they want that box of gifts." Cheyenne objected vehemently, "Mom, that box of gifts was meant for Lucas. None of them have the right to decide what to do with them." Seeing this, Bryce sneered. "I thought Aunt Karen commands great authority at home, but I didn't expect both your daughters to disregard you and have no respect for you at all. They keep going against your decisions. Anyway, think through it yourselves. It's your only chance to return to the family. Once you miss it, Grandpa will never give you a chance again, even if you beg him. You will also have to pay us $8 million and not a single cent less." Karen immediately became anxious and hurriedly pushed William. "Hurry up and say something. Quickly agree to return to the family." William pushed Karen away. "I'm not going back. Cheyenne and the others got bullied so terribly, so what's the point of going back? If you want to, you can go back yourself." To be honest, William had also become completely disappointed in the family. After being pushed by her husband, who had always obeyed her, Karen flew into a rage and reached out to scratch him. "You useless good. For nothing, you can't earn any money at all. If we don't return to the Carters, how can we maintain a livelihood? How are you going to pay the $8 million we owe them?" The two of them got into a scuffle while Cheyenne and Charlotte hurriedly tried to pull them apart. Bryce was getting impatient. If not for that box of gifts, he wouldn't bother talking to them. "Enough. Don't put on an act in front of me either. Go and find where the items are." Bryce cocked his head toward the security officers behind him and immediately headed into the house. "Wait." Seeing how the situation was developing, Karen stopped fighting with William and hurriedly rushed into the house to stop them. She just wanted to give Bryce half of the items. If he moved them away himself, he definitely wouldn't leave anything for them. Karen stopped in front of her bed, but her actions gave the security officers a cue. Two of them went forward to pull her away while others lifted the bed and quickly took out two boxes from beneath, one large and one small. "Hey! These are my belongings." Karen's eyes were about to fall out. Lucas's items were in the large box, but the small box contained her personal stash that she had saved up over the years. Bryce simply ignored her and took a brief glimpse at the box full of cash, title deeds, and share transfer documents. He was so excited that he couldn't stop himself from laughing. He could tell at a glance that the value of these items was more than $15 million. Watching the security officers carry the items out of the house, Cheyenne and the others naturally weren't willing to let them take the things away. But they were just a bunch of weak women, so how could they stop these people? They didn't just take away the box of gifts. They also snatched away the Lamborghini parked by the entrance. Oh my God! They're a bunch of bandits. Karen sat on the ground and patted her thigh while wailing. "What are you crying for? It's all your fault. If you didn't show off in front of them yesterday, they wouldn't have come here." William yelled at her. Karen was incensed. "How dare you yell at me? It's all because you're a useless man and a loser." Seeing that the two were about to argue again, Charlotte was so infuriated that she shouted, "Okay, stop arguing. The items the Sawyers gifted Lucas have been snatched away. How are we going to explain it to him? Explain my foot. Bryce Carter and his men were the ones who took those things away anyway. If he has what it takes, he can very well go after the Carters. Karen didn't care what Lucas would think. She just felt the huge pinch. Oh, by the way, Cheyenne, didn't Bryce say that he would let us back into the Carter family as long as we gave him those items? Does this mean that we don't have to leave the Carter family now? Now that he has taken them away, go to your grandfather and inform him about this. Karen suddenly urged while grabbing Cheyenne's arm. Cheyenne shook Karen's hand off and said coldly, if you want to go back, go ask them yourself. After saying this, she took Amelia's hand and left. All the things that the Carters had done before had completely shattered Cheyenne's heart. She would definitely not go back to the Carter family. Hey, you're defying me, huh? Karen complained before turning to look at Charlotte. Charlotte. Without letting her finish, Charlotte interrupted, whoever wants to go back can ask themselves. Anyway, I'm not going to go back to that family. She then left with a look of annoyance. William ignored Karen and headed back inside quietly with a somber expression. In the entire courtyard, only Karen remained, sitting on the floor and lamenting endlessly about her miserable life. Lucas soon caught wind of everything that happened at the residence. He stared expressionlessly into the distance, the corners of his lips curling up into a faint cold smile. Since you Carters have a death wish, I'll grant you your wish. Chapter 47. Drastic change in the Carter family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Bryce returned to the Carter main residence in the luxurious Lamborghini with the large box of cash, title deeds, and share transfer documents. The Carters in the main residence gathered around Bryce, amazed and in awe at the luxurious car and the box with assets worth more than $15 million inside. They praised Bryce incessantly too. Bryce is really something. He managed to bring so many things home. The Carters are going to make a comeback again soon. He's indeed worthy of being Dominic's biological grandson. He's so capable. If Bryce takes over the family in the future, we can all rest assured. Not bad, not bad. Bryce has always been outstanding since he was a child. He's definitely cut out for achieving great things. He's becoming more and more capable now, isn't he? The flattering words and compliments of the Carters made Bryce feel like he was on cloud nine. Dominic was also grinning widely, extremely satisfied with Bryce, his grandson. Bryce, you've done well. In the future, I can rest assured handing the family over to you. Dominic patted Bryce on the shoulder. Bryce hurriedly said modestly, thank you, Grandpa. I will definitely work harder in the future and never let you down. At this happy moment, a member of the family suddenly dashed in nervously. Bad news. Something terrible happened. What's wrong? Why are you so flustered? Bryce glared angrily at the person who suddenly ran in and ruined the atmosphere. The people from the factories informed us that all the factories belonging to the Carter Corporation have been closed allegedly due to violations during the manufacturing process and rectifications have to be made. The finance department has also received a notice saying that the financial risk of our corporation is too high, so we have to repay all the loans we've made by the end of today. Otherwise, we will be sued, and we will have to declare bankruptcy and begin the liquidation procedures. This news was a bolt out of the blue and like a bomb instantly dropped on everyone's head. Dominic's expression changed drastically, and he stood up abruptly. How did this happen? Bryce's face was also extraordinarily gloomy. All of this happened too suddenly. Someone must be trying to attack the Carters. Since the Carters were in pursuit of maximum profit, it was definitely difficult for them to have factories achieve 100% compliance with all regulations during the manufacturing process. Thus, if someone deliberately tried to check on them, they would definitely succeed. But usually, even if there were inspections, those who were close to the Carters would inform them in advance, and their factories wouldn't be closed straight away. Besides, who knew when the rectification would take place? There would be massive losses incurred and enormous problems resulting from the shutdown of the factories for a day. Besides, they didn't know how long the shutdown was going to last. Although the Carters' businesses hadn't been flourishing lately, they felt that there must have been more reasons for the bank to demand all loans be repaid within a day. While Bryce was angry, Dominic thought about it carefully. "Bryce, hurry up and call Mr. Shaw to find out what's going on in the factories and if it's possible to get some leeway through connections. Hurry and call the bank too." Bryce hurriedly made several phone calls, but unfortunately, Mr. Shaw didn't answer at all. Furthermore, the bank only gave them cold replies and claimed that the financial risk of the Carter Corporation was proven too high after some assessment, and so the loans had to be repaid. The news made the Carters look even more dismayed. Mr. Shaw used to have a very close relationship with the Carters. But this time, he not only did not notify in advance but also refused to answer their calls. Clearly, someone whom Mr. Shaw dared not offend was involved in the closure of the factories this time. The issue of the bank loans made them even more anxious. The capital turnover of the Carters was dependent on bank loans to a large extent. The cash they had on hand was far from enough for them to repay the loans, and even if they included the assets that Bryce had just brought home, there still wouldn't be enough. After all, of all the items in the box, only the $1 million in cash was usable. The administrative procedures for the title deeds and the luxury car hadn't been settled yet. While the Carters were at a loss, they were struck with a greater blow. The head of the finance department of the Carter Corporation dashed in, his forehead covered in sweat. "Oh dear, Chairman, many partner companies have asked to terminate their contracts with us. We can't dissuade them at all. Now, there are many people gathered in front of the company, demanding to terminate their contracts with us and for us to pay off our debts." Dominic sat down on the sofa with a loud thump, pale as a sheet. "All of you, go and find out who's the one getting up to such tricks behind our backs." After he ordered coldly, the Carters dared not idle about any longer and made countless calls. "Hello, Mr. Wilson. I'm calling from the Carter Corporation. Our contract with your company." "Damn it." He hung up. "Hello, Mr. White. I'd like to ask about our contract." "Hello. Hello." The people in charge of various partner companies immediately hung up after hearing the Carters' questions. After great effort, they finally got some information from a company they used to cooperate with often. "Don't blame me. The Carters offended a big shot and got us into trouble too," Mr. Evans said helplessly. Dominic's heart dropped, and he hurriedly grabbed the phone. "Mr. Evans, on my account, can you tell me which big shot the Carters have offended?" Mr. Evans sighed. "Mr. Carter, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but I really don't know. We also received a phone call from someone who said that our company would be in trouble if we didn't terminate our cooperation with you. Don't think I'm fearmongering or trying to lie to you. You'll find out if you ask others." Mr. Evans hung up without saying anything further. Dominic and the other Carters all had dismal expressions. There was no longer a need to make more phone calls to confirm. The fact that that big shot could cause their factories to cease production and have the bank demand repayment of all their loans within a day meant that they were definitely powerful. However, even after racking their brains, they still couldn't figure out how they had offended a big shot. While remaining silent, Dominic suddenly looked at the box that Bryce had brought home. The lid of the box was open, revealing the stacks of pink banknotes, as well as the large stack of supporting documents. Dominic suddenly thought of something and inhaled sharply before slapping Bryce on his face. "Sinner, it's all your fault." Bryce was dumbstruck by the loud and sudden slap. It took him a long time to react. Covering his face aggrievedly, he asked, "Grandpa, what wrong did I commit?" Chapter 48. Seek her forgiveness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Dominic pointed at the box furiously. "Are you still clueless? What did you say in front of that family yesterday? Right after you snatched this box of items from them today, our factories had to close, and production lines had to cease for rectification. The bank even demanded repayment of all our loans, and so many of our partner companies are asking to terminate their contracts with us. Think about it. Who did we offend? Bryce froze immediately. After thinking through the events of the past 2 days, Bryce blinked and asked in disbelief, "Grandpa, are you saying that Ethan Sawyer did these things?" Dominic said with displeasure, "Who else could it be? It has been quite peaceful at home these days, but ever since you brought your people there to snatch this box from them, terrible things have been happening one after another. This is definitely a warning from the Sawyers because we took away the gifts meant for Charlotte Carter." Only then did Bryce realize that the Sawyers had been watching Charlotte's family. He covered his hot and flushed face, feeling extremely aggrieved. He wasn't the one who suggested going to Cheyenne's home to snatch the betrothal gifts from them in the first place. Besides, they had all given their approval beforehand. Yet now, they were blaming him. "Anyway, since you've made a grave mistake by bringing this box here, you have to solve this matter." Ignoring Bryce's displeasure, Dominic instructed with a stern expression, "Send these items back. You must seek Charlotte's forgiveness so that the Sawyers will let us off. Otherwise, it'll be over for the Carters." Despite his reluctance, Bryce had no choice but to go and look for Charlotte. He searched for a long time before finding out that Charlotte had gone to work at the Stardust Corporation today. But unfortunately, he was stopped at the entrance of the Stardust Corporation office, as security wouldn't let him in. "My cousin is working in your company. I'm urgently looking for her." Remaining unmoved, the security officer said, "You can give her a call and ask her to come out. Anyway, you're not an employee of our company nor a client, so you are not allowed to go in." Bryce was furious. He had called Charlotte countless times, but all his calls were rejected. He didn't know if Charlotte had blocked him or not, but he couldn't contact her at all. Otherwise, why would he go to the Stardust Corporation to stop Charlotte from leaving? "Please leave immediately. Do not disrupt the order of our office," the chief security officer warned. Bryce was frustrated and anxious. He really wanted to barge in, but he was at the Stardust Corporation office, and he dared not offend them. At this moment, just as he was about to ignore the security officers and dash into the office building, the eagle-eyed Bryce spotted a familiar figure walking over. That familiar figure was Lucas. Bryce was extremely indignant as he rushed forward to stop Lucas. Then he yelled at the security officers, "This person isn't one of your employees either. Why aren't you stopping him?" What surprised Bryce even more was that after the security officers saw Lucas, they actually bowed in unison. "Mr. Gray, welcome." Lucas nodded indifferently, glanced at Bryce, and then raised his brows a little. Since Lucas was stopped by the security officers at the entrance when he came to the Stardust Corporation office previously, the general manager, Flynn Davis, had fired all of them. Afterward, the security officers saw Davis accompanying Lucas to the top floor of the office building and also received orders from Davis that no one was to stop Lucas from entering again. Therefore, although all of them were clueless about Lucas's identity, they dared not offend him and were very respectful toward him because they thought that he was at least a client whom Davis valued greatly. Bryce was almost stunned speechless, but he was still indignant. What right does he have to enter? He's just a live.in son.in.law of the Carters, a useless good.for. nothing. Why is he allowed to enter, but I'm not? Lucas sneered, unbothered by Bryce. The chief security officer hurriedly stopped Bryce. "This is the Stardust Corporation. If you want to kick up a ruckus and deliberately cause trouble, don't blame us for getting nasty." Unwilling to concede, Bryce snapped, "You condescending security officers, I'm going to lodge a complaint against you for being biased." The chief security officer sneered. "Mr. Gray is an important client of Mr. Davis. Who are you? Hurry up and get lost." A few of them came over from the side and surrounded Bryce to shoo him away from Lucas, lest he collided into Lucas recklessly. Him. Important client. You guys must have been fooled by this good.4. Bryce clamored and reached out in a bid to grab Lucas. Lucas, you loser, get your ass over here. Lucas frowned in annoyance while the alert chief security officer immediately said, Mr. Gray, please go inside and let us handle the matter here. Lucas nodded and turned around to leave. The new chief security officer Davis hired was indeed much more reliable than the previous one. Behind him, a couple of security officers dragged Bryce far away and then threw him onto the ground. Lucas broke Bryce's arm previously, and it hadn't healed completely yet. After being flung onto the ground, he immediately shrieked in pain, but no one cared about him. Bryce cursed incessantly. But he didn't dare go to the entrance of the Stardust Corporation office building again. He had no choice but to stand at a spot far away, all the way until he saw Charlotte coming out of the building after getting off work. Charlotte. Just got off work, huh? Bryce exclaimed affectionately as he approached her. What are you doing here? Charlotte detested Bryce greatly. In the morning, he had just snatched their belongings away. What was he doing again at the entrance of her office? Charlotte, it's my fault for what happened this morning. I hereby apologize to you. Actually, I just wanted to crack a joke with you. I've already returned the car and the box of things. I really have. Bryce swore while patting his chest and feeling immense heartache deep down. However, Charlotte didn't buy it at all. A joke. How amusing. Why don't I stab you with a knife and then tell you that it was just a joke? Also, we've already been kicked out by the Carters, so you're not my cousin. We have nothing to do with each other anymore. Charlotte stepped forward and was about to leave, but Bryce hurriedly rushed forward to stop her. Charlotte, we are at least relatives. You won't be so cruel as to leave us in the lurch, right? What do you mean? Charlotte frowned and looked at him. Bryce gritted his teeth. We are all from the Carter family. I know I was wrong for doing what I did in the morning. Please have mercy and let us off, all right. Chapter 49. Personal visit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Bryce's words caught Charlotte by surprise. What's up with the Sawyers? And what happened to the Carters? Bryce looked at Charlotte, unconvinced that she was clueless about what happened. We're a family, so there's no need to pretend, is there? Right after I came home from your place, our factories were forced to close and stop production lines for rectification. The bank even wants us to repay all of our loans by the end of today. And almost all the companies we have cooperations with have asked to terminate their partnership contracts with us. We really can't hold on any longer. Bryce wiped his tears. I know I was wrong to have taken your gifts, and that's the reason the Sawyers are offended. I really know my mistakes. Charlotte, please help us beg for forgiveness from the Sawyers and ask them to let us off. Only then did Charlotte find out what had happened to the Carters. However, to be honest, Charlotte felt thrilled to see how miserable the Carters seemed to be, according to Bryce. I can only say that you people deserve it. If you keep doing evil, you will end up harming yourselves one day, Charlotte said without emotion. Also, don't come looking for me. I've already said this morning that the box of gifts wasn't for me but Lucas. Even if you want to get someone to plead for mercy on your behalf, you found the wrong person. You. Are you really that heartless? Bryce glared at Charlotte with a menacing expression. Charlotte was so frightened that she hurriedly scurried away after saying, anyway, don't come looking for me. Bryce stared at her figure from behind with a vicious gaze. Since Bryce returned home after a fruitless trip, he naturally had to face the music from Dominic. Have I been overindulging you? You can't even get such a trivial matter done right. You're so disappointing. At this moment, the Carters were facing a huge crisis, and Dominic was so anxious that he started being hostile to his grandson, whom he usually doted on. Bryce clenched his fist and tried to argue. "Grandpa, I stayed put at the entrance of Charlotte Carter's workplace for the entire day, but she refused to budge and even said that those gifts were meant for Lucas, not her. She was obviously just trying to fool me." "That's your problem too. Anyway, if you can't deal with Charlotte Carter, don't come back to see me again." Wastrel. After being scolded harshly by his grandfather, he turned around and left the house, feeling frustrated and upset. "Dominic, the Larsons are insistent on terminating their cooperation with our company. Chairman, the president of ICBC Bank refuses to give in, and he insists that we have to repay the loans by the end of today, or we will be sued. We went around trying to raise funds, but to no avail. They all hung up after hearing our names. The Sawyers refused to communicate with us, and they simply said that they're in no place to make a decision because Ethan Sawyer is not in town." As he heard these pieces of bad news, Dominic's face grew increasingly downcast, and he couldn't sit still at all. After thinking about it, he made up his mind. He decided to swallow his pride and personally go to William Carter's home. Dominic's sudden visit made William and Karen extremely nervous. Over the years, Dominic had never visited them, and they wondered if this time William and Karen didn't enjoy peace this night as well. Bright early in the morning, Bryce had brought his men over and snatched away their chest of treasures worth more than $15 million. Karen wanted her daughters to beg Dominic to let them return to the Carter family. However, they hadn't returned yet. In the afternoon, Bryce suddenly returned the box of gifts and the car, claiming to have made a mistake. William and Karen were bewildered, and they wondered what he had up his sleeve. In the evening, Dominic personally visited them, which was rather rare. What's going on? Is he here to take back the house or the box of gifts?" Karen and William watched as Dominic entered. They were so nervous that they had no idea where to place their hands. "Dad, you..." William said carefully. To his surprise, Dominic was not as austere as he usually was. Instead, there was a smile on his face. "William, it's been hard on you staying in such a small house. Tomorrow, move back in with us. I'll pick out a nice house for you." William and Karen glared at him in disbelief. "Is Dominic Carter letting us move back in?" The Carters owned a large cluster of mansions where all the direct descendants of the Carter family lived. However, due to the fact that William was not blood-related to the Carters, they were singled out and made to live in this old and shabby residence, where they had stayed for decades. Yet Dominic is asking us to go back now. Seemingly thinking that it wasn't enough, Dominic Carter said, "Moreover, William has been idling at home for such a long time. I'll arrange for you to take on a role in the company. Go to work tomorrow. Karen, if you're willing, I can arrange for you to work in the company too. You don't have to go to the office, but you will be paid accordingly." Really, Karen and William were overjoyed. To be able to work at the Carters' company was simply their dream for many years. Previously, they also wanted to enter the company countless times. But unfortunately, the Carters never gave them the chance. Today, Dominic visited them personally and even announced such a good piece of news that they had never dared to imagine. All of a sudden, the two of them felt like they were in a dream. William was gazing at Dominic with tears in his eyes. "It turns out Dominic Carter still treats me like his son after all." At this moment, Cheyenne entered through the door while holding Amelia's hand. When she saw Dominic sitting in the living room, she couldn't help but widen her eyes in surprise, while beside her, Amelia was even staring at him curiously. Forcing himself to smile kindly, Dominic asked, "Cheyenne, you're back. This is your daughter, right?" It was actually funny. Dominic had always disliked Cheyenne and Amelia because of her scandal back then, and he even forbade her from bringing Amelia to the office and the main residence. So this was Dominic's first time seeing Amelia and talking to her, even though she was already 5 years old. "Amelia, quick, greet him. This is your great-grandfather, Karen hurriedly urged. Amelia blinked, cowered beside Cheyenne, and said fearfully, I'm scared of this grandpa. After she said that, everyone's faces turned gloomy. Chapter 50. Go and plead for mercy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. When Dominic heard Amelia's words, he was naturally displeased, as evidenced by his frown. Meanwhile, Karen and William were afraid that Amelia's words would make Dominic upset with them. Amelia, what are you saying? He's your great-grandfather. Quickly greet him properly. Karen yelled at Amelia. Amelia gripped Cheyenne's clothes even more tightly, refusing to go over. Children were extremely sensitive to the emotions of others. Although Dominic was smiling, Amelia saw the ferocious gaze in his eyes when he was glaring at her and her mom. Seeing that Amelia refused to go over, Karen grabbed Amelia's arm and pulled her over. What's the matter with you? You're so young but already so rude. You're not greeting your elders properly. Mom. Cheyenne immediately went forward to stop her, overwhelmed with anger. Amelia is still so young. She's going to get hurt by being yanked so hard. She's being rude to your grandfather. Why aren't you hurrying to discipline her? Instead, you're still defending her. You've spoiled her rotten. Karen exclaimed at Cheyenne. I remember that we've already been disowned by the Carters. How is my grandfather and Amelia's great-grandfather? Cheyenne retorted coldly. She then picked Amelia up and headed upstairs. She was truly speechless toward Dominic Carter. Cheyenne, it was indeed my fault for what happened before. It's also my fault for causing you to harbor resentment toward me. I'm here today to apologize to you. Please forgive me. Dominic's old voice sounded from behind. Cheyenne stopped in her tracks. Since when has Dominic Carter ever apologized to me in such a mellow manner? She never remembered him ever doing so. In an instant, all the numerous grievances and mistreatments that she had suffered began surfacing, making her tear up and feel a strong urge to cry her heart out. Unfortunately, Dominic's previous actions had long gotten rid of the familial affection she had toward him as a granddaughter. She had also gotten a clear look at his true colors. The fact that he came to their home today and unexpectedly offered his apologies was really unlike Dominic Carter. She felt that things were fishy and that he definitely had a hidden agenda. Cheyenne got a grip on her emotions and carried Amelia upstairs quietly. Cheyenne. Karen called out her name incessantly, but she ignored her and returned to her room. Dominic, I'm sorry. We've spoiled Cheyenne rotten, and she's too insensible. Please don't hold it against her, Karen hurriedly explained. Dominic took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart before waving his hand and pretending to be sad. I can't blame her. I'm old, and my days are numbered. I've been strict to my children and grandchildren, all for their own good, but who knew? Seeing this, William immediately felt heartache and grabbed Dominic's hand. Dad, don't say that. You're healthy, and the Carter family needs you. The loving scene of an affectionate father and his son was taking place in the living room downstairs. So when Charlotte came home, she was shocked to see the two of them talking to each other affectionately. She couldn't help but blink her eyes, wondering if her eyes were playing tricks on her. Charlotte, you're finally back. Your grandfather has been waiting here for a long time. Karen hurriedly took Charlotte's hand and walked over. Dominic's eyes lit up, and he looked at Charlotte with a heartened look before saying warmly, Charlotte used to be a little girl. In the blink of an eye, she has already become a beautiful young woman. When Charlotte heard this unprecedented praise from Dominic Carter, she was extremely surprised and disgusted at the same time. Save it. Just get straight to the point, Charlotte said hostilely. Charlotte, watch your tone with your grandfather. What happened to your manners? William berated Charlotte with a dark expression. What's going on today? Dad finally made a trip here to ask us to move back in with the Carters, yet Cheyenne and Charlotte have been so hostile to him. What if he really gets angry? Charlotte sneered. Bryce Carter came to look for me this afternoon, and now it's Grandpa's turn. You guys can drop the pretense. I'll get straight to it. I can't fulfill Bryce's request, so you'd better look for someone else. Karen looked bewildered. What request? What's going on? William had a furious expression. What nonsense are you spouting? Your grandpa came here to ask us to go back to the Carter family. He also asked us to move back to the main residence and offered me a job at the Carter Corporation. Your grandpa is being so kind. Don't upset him. William stated what happened explicitly, but he was also warning Charlotte, fearing that she might end up angering Dominic and causing him to change his mind. After hearing this, Charlotte said sarcastically, "Oh, I see. Grandpa is here to throw a Trojan horse at us. Indeed, he's pulling the same tricks as Bryce. He first played the kinship card and then tried to lure me. No wonder he's your grandson." After saying that, Charlotte ignored William's paling face and continued, "Isn't this just a trick you're playing to get us to go to the Sawyers to plead for mercy so that they'll let the Carters off?" Karen and William both froze in shock for a moment. Despite having been directly exposed by Charlotte, Dominic did not seem awkward at all and still continued pretending to be kind. "Charlotte, I know that we have some misunderstandings between us, but we're still a family after all. I came here today because I'm really worried about you guys. I also have some things to ask of you. I've already punished Bryce for what he's done today, and I guarantee he won't do it again. Charlotte, just tell the Sawyers to be merciful and let us off. We will definitely treat you well in the future." After hearing what Dominic said, Karen and William realized that he was not here to catch up with them and reminisce about the past but to get Charlotte to go to plead with the Sawyers. He chose Charlotte as his target naturally because he still thought that she was going to marry into the Sawyer family, and he was just trying to make up with them out of convenience. Charlotte laughed self-deprecatingly. "What makes you think that the Sawyers will forgive you on my account? Who am I to influence the Sawyers?" Dominic said anxiously, "Aren't you the fiancé of Ethan Sawyer's son? The Sawyers did that to us because they're standing up for you. I just need you to explain to them that this is all just a misunderstanding, and things will be resolved soon." Charlotte smiled wryly. "What fiancé? Ethan Sawyer's son has been married for a long time.